Thank you all for coming. First off, I would like to thank a couple of people that are involved with us, with you as the community. Tiffany Tuzula is the professor at Pace Law. She's an adjunct professor at Pace Law and a training and public engagement specialist, right? She's responsible for heading our community outreach. Our steering committee, which is an integral part of this whole committee, is Jane Abate, Joe Bonanno, Neil Del Duca, Chris DiMartino, Marisa Farrell, Natalie Jokai, Jim Maxwell, Tom Malo, and Carlene Verna, and we appreciate their efforts. They have a big job ahead of them working on this committee. Patrick Cleary of Cleary Consulting, he is our town planner. He also won the bid for doing this master plan for us. He knows the town, he knows our needs, and he will create the master plan with all the information obtained from your efforts. I thank the Mount Pleasant IDA. Kevin Highland is our CFO, I guess you would be considered, of our IDA. The IDA is footing the bill for this. It is not costing the taxpayers a dime, which is a nice thing. These things could be very expensive. The residents of Mount Pleasant now have an opportunity to have a great part in steering the future of our community. Not myself, not the town board. It is strictly you alone that will steer us in our future. Not since the 70s has this process been undertaken. It is big, it is important, and it is necessary for us to do at this point. Let's leave Mount Pleasant better than we found it. Thank you again for coming.
Welcome, everybody. Yes, it is 75 degrees outside and sunny. I apologize for bringing you here tonight on such a lovely evening. But we'll try to be efficient with your time this evening. But I wanted to first give a little bit of context about why we're here and what we're doing this evening. Okay, who remembers 1970? Raise your hand if you remember 1970. It was the first Earth Day. Gasoline cost 32 cents a gallon and was mostly unleaded. Paul quits the Beatles. We know that was really Yoko's fault. Tom Hanks landed Apollo 13 successfully. We all know about that. The war in Vietnam was escalating. The protests about that were escalating. In 1970, the 747 came online, as did the Concorde. Who remembers the AMC Gremlin? Greatest car in the world, or perhaps the car that actually fell apart coming off the assembly line. But 1970 was the year, as the supervisor mentioned, that the town adopted its comprehensive plan, the plan under which we operate today. That's a long time. So why are we doing this now? There's a lot of reasons to do this now. There are significant demographic changes that are occurring in this community. The baby boomers are significantly influencing a lot of the choices we're making now, as are our children, the millennials. Those choices in many ways relate to the housing opportunities in this community and the way our community's zoning is constructed today. There is not a lot of diversity in the housing choices allowed or available in this community. Our land use and zoning regulations have really not kept pace. There are some real significant land use shifts that are occurring right now. The obsolescence of the office parks throughout the county, the retail apocalypse that many of you have heard about, brought about by Amazon and many others, have really changed the retail landscape in our hamlets. The institutional uses that exist in this community are also creating significant changes throughout the community. The Legion of Christ property right up the road, been sold to a boarding school. Half of it is approved for residential development. So those are examples of how those institutional uses are changing significantly. The advent of what's happening on what's known as the North 60, and you'll hear more about that tonight, is having and has the potential to have a real profound change on this community. That's the biotech industry and what that is really going to do in the town of Mount Pleasant. Our hamlets have not really successfully competed regionally. They have failed to maintain a competitive advantage in spite of a number of advantages that we have in our hamlet areas. There are currently very positive economic conditions which are bringing to the town innovation, perhaps crazy ideas as well, and we need the ability to sort those out in a comprehensive and thoughtful manner. And it's about time. So what is a comprehensive plan? It's really a policy, a long-range policy guide, and it provides guidance. It doesn't carry with it the force of law, it provides guidance. The guidance gets implemented through separate laws, like zoning, land use controls, and local laws and regulations. Once adopted, and this is a very important element of this, once that comprehensive plan or this comprehensive plan is adopted, all of our local laws, all of our local regulations must be consistent with this comprehensive plan. And over time, the work that you all are going to put into this comprehensive plan this evening, through the creation of a vision, becomes the identification of the community. So really this exercise that we are all invited you to participate in really will be fundamental in crafting this comprehensive plan, the rules and the regulations. So it's incredibly important. The project, as the supervisor indicated, the town has retained a project team to help with the preparation of this comprehensive plan. Cleary Consulting, Sullivan Architecture, Adler Consulting, and the Pace Land Use Law Center are all teamed up to help prepare this, to move through this exercise and prepare the document. So what does the comprehensive plan, what is it made up of? The first piece of it is a really deep dive into where we are, an analysis of existing conditions. The plan then creates visions, the type of thing we're working on this evening. Desired outcomes, where do we want to go? Objectives and policies, how to get there, and the really discrete actions of getting there to the most significant and minute details. So we go from big picture to really to the details. What is composed of this comprehensive plan? So it'll be composed of about 5 elements. We're going to look at the built environment, and you'll see some of these reflected in this breakout sessions we have this evening, where we look at the physical characteristics of the community, zoning and land use and transportation and infrastructure. We'll look at producing a plan that is harmonious with nature. So obviously we'll take into consideration all of the environmental characteristics of the community, also looking at things like climate change and alternative energy, sustainability, and green building. It's incredibly important that this plan is constructed around a resilient economy, an economy that creates a balanced economy and a sustainable economy, one that provides for economic growth within the physical capacities of the community. And importantly, it is a deep focus on hamlet-based community development and revitalization. And importantly, more and more importantly these days, about providing a resilient economy in the face of disasters. The plan is also involves a significant element of establishing equity, so that there's housing choice and variety, a balance between jobs and housing, that the community's public services and healthcare systems are accessible, the schools remain competitive and quality, we accommodate the infrastructural deficiencies that exist in the community, and so forth. Community health is another important element with respect to the comprehensive plan, making sure we're avoiding and removing pollutants and toxins from our community, reducing crime and increasing public safety, mitigating brownfields, enhancing physical activity and healthy lifestyles, providing accessibility to our parks and from all of our neighborhoods, providing healthy food for our neighborhoods, accessibility to the arts and culture, all incredibly important elements, and doing so in a regional context. We're not alone. We sit in a regional area where we are in the center of things. Literally in the center of Westchester County. It's an area that has roughly 1.5 miles of waterfront on the Hudson River. I don't know if you think of yourselves as a Hudson River waterfront community, but Mount Pleasant is. It's a town of homes, a town of businesses, from major corporations, PepsiCo and Zeiss and so forth, to small family operations and businesses, quite diverse. It's a town of education. We host Pace University, the New York Medical College, the New York Dental College, We have the EF Academy, an internationally renowned boarding school. We have excellent public schools. It's a town on the cutting edge of technology. What's happened with Regeneron at the former Union Carbide property and their expansion of their facilities and the expansion of the biotech field and the North 60 potential development, that's a $1.5 billion redevelopment that will involve 3 million square feet of biotechnical space in the southwestern portion of the town, has an enormous potential to significantly influence the community. So we are on the cutting edge of technology. We have a legacy. Usonia is a very unique area. It was as an idealistic community, Frank Lloyd Wright, a planned community designed for average people. And on the other side of the community, we had a very uniquely planned area for a very unaverage person. So the legacy of the community is quite expansive. It's a town that is vital to the greatest city in the world. We host the water supply infrastructure for New York City. The Delaware and the Catskill reservoirs mix at the Kensico Reservoir. That water travels through the newer UV plant at Eastview before traveling down to New York City. All of that within the town of Mount Pleasant. We support the county. We hold the county jail facility, the fire training facility, the bus facility, the recycling facility, all in the town of Mount Pleasant. We're a town of healing, the county medical center, the Maria Ferrari Children's Hospital, the Blythedale Children's Hospital, all within the town of Mount Pleasant. We're a town of recreation. We have state parks. We have major county parks. We have an extraordinary series of local parks and local facilities like the building we're in this evening. We're a town of abundant natural resources. We're a town of connections. We have the Sawmill River, the Sprain. We have the Taconic. We have the railroad, which is an incredibly significant asset for the community. And as you can see from the land use map in front of you, that's an incredibly diverse array and pattern of land use. The varied colors represent the varied land uses throughout the community. An awful lot going on in the town of Mount Pleasant. Those 24.1 square miles, about 15,000 acres. Interestingly, the largest percentage of land use is devoted to open space and recreational land. I don't know if you knew that. The second largest area is residential use, 17% commercial use. We have a large chunk of land that's the rights of way in the community, and that little sliver on the top, about 9%, is undeveloped vacant land. There are still opportunities in this community, and that's one of the reasons we're here tonight. Fun facts about land use. We have 820 acres of cemeteries in the town of Mount Pleasant. 417 acres of agricultural land in the town of Mount Pleasant. Over 1,400 acres of institutional uses. Those are those hospitals, schools that I mentioned earlier. 2,600 acres over of public park lands. 524 acres of water supply land. And that's the red number that we need to be concerned about, over 1,300 acres of vacant and undeveloped land. Something may happen on that land, and we need to be a step ahead of that. Interestingly, the land use controls that govern that were established in 1970, and as you can see the difference between this image and the image I showed you before, which was land use. Multicolors, lots of stuff going on. This is the existing zoning. Very singularly colored, mostly residentially zoned land. It is not discrete, and it does not take into account the variability of the land uses in this community today. We're a community of about 27,000 folks. Gradual growth, except in the 50s, the post-war boom. That's when this community grew by about 64% over that decade. Relatively stable growth since then. We are a community that's old. I hate to say that, but the biggest cohort in this community is the group between age 35 and 64, and that age is skewing to the high end, 44% of the community. So we have to be aware of that population, and we need to accommodate that population. It's a community that is primarily white, 83%, but the Hispanic population is at 8.7% and increasing, as is the Asian and Pacific Islander population at 6.5% and increasing. Education, it's a very literate community. Over 67% of the community has some college degree. And this is an interesting piece to this. Over 23% of the community has a graduate degree or higher. So it's a very literate community, especially the smarter end of the community. Employment. Most of the workforce of about 12,000 folks is employed in the management field, really half the community. So those well-educated folks are all the bosses out there. So if there's a lot of bossing around going on tonight, we know why that is. And we are a relatively affluent community. Median household income's over $100,000. That's above the county average at about 83. And interestingly, as I indicated at the bottom, that's skewed at the high end of the income spectrum. So again, those very intelligent folks with graduate degrees earn a lot of money, and that's a big percentage in this community. Housing occupancy and tenure. This is where we start to see some of the difficulties and challenges we're dealing with. Most of our housing units in the community are occupied, almost 98%, very low occupancy or vacancy rates. Most of those units are owner occupied. We have very few rental units in this community. Mostly single-family homes. Again, that goes to that zoning map I showed you earlier, that yellow color. Not a lot of diversity in this community, mostly single-family homes. And here's another significant issue. The median age of the housing stock in this community is built in 1995. 73% of the housing stock in this community is over 50 years old. That should open people's eyes. What that means is even though you live in a neighborhood that might have been fully developed, the housing stock in that community probably needs to be revisited. People are going to be knocking down those homes. People are going to be renovating those homes. They're just old. So it's something we need to be aware of and keenly aware of. So moving forward, we're going to move to our breakout sessions. There are six areas in the room. You can choose whichever one you want to go to. They're in your agenda, which the groups are. So feel free to pick up your chairs and move to the group. Tiffany wants to say something first. Don't use this.
First of all, welcome and thank you so much for attending tonight. I'm from PACE Land Use Law Center, and we provide technical assistance to municipalities throughout the Hudson Valley, and we are always thrilled to work on community engagement efforts, because this is what it's all about this evening. And the rest of this process is about building a plan and a vision for the citizens of Mount Pleasant. And so that's why you're here tonight, is that we as a team want to make sure that the plan doesn't sit on a shelf once this is created, but it's something that's used, it's revisited, it's looked at, because it incorporates all of your ideas that come not only from this evening, but throughout this process in the next few months. And so tonight is very important to us. One of the things we're going to be asking you is to think through, what do you love about living here in Mount Pleasant? What are the issues and what are your concerns? And what are your ideas, right? You live here, you work here, you recreate here. So what we need to get all of that input in order to create an up-to-date plan. So on that note, what we're going to do this evening is, as Pat said, break up into 6 different groups. So we have 6 stations around the room. It looked a lot better when we first started, but we had more and more people come in, so that's fine. Let me go over the themes this evening. I'm standing on my tippy toes, so hold on. Okay. So we've got a session that is happening right over here at this flip chart with Bill, called Economy, okay? And the economy, of course, you're going to be talking about your tax base. You're going to be talking about employment and jobs here in town. You're going to be talking about what are co-working spaces and what other ideas do you have for job opportunities here in Mount Pleasant. And you'll also begin to talk about redevelopment sites and things in that nature, your hamlets. The second topic that you'll visit this evening, if you'd like, is in the back corner with Max. And Max, if you could raise your hand. Max is going to cover the subject of sustainability and resiliencies. These are on the back of your agenda, by the way, which you picked up this evening. And that's all about climate mitigation and resource consumption and climate adaptation and recycling and ideas that you might have for the sustainability and resiliency of Mount Pleasant. In the back, you have with Joan, and Joan, raise your hand as our facilitator. Joan is going to cover the important topic of mobility. So you have ideas and thoughts about transportation and traffic, right? Traffic congestion typically, right? Parking and car share, bicycling and walkability, right? Where do you want to see sidewalks? Where are there, right? Where are there areas to bike potentially? We want to explore those opportunities in the session of mobility. In the left-hand corner in the back is Jessica, and she is going to cover the topic of community, culture, and education. And it's in that session you can bring up thoughts about historical and cultural resources, and arts and culture, health and wellness, your educational institution, your community centers, and ideas that you might have to enhance, again, community and culture of the town of Mount Pleasant. If you want to see me, I'm going to be in the left-hand corner over there in the front of the room on natural environment and open space. And here we obviously will talk about your natural resources, your parks, your trails, your open spaces, what those mean to you, which ones are important, what would you like to see, do you need more open space? We can talk about all of that in my corner on the left. And the final topic will happen right here in the front, and we'll move the power, the computer and stuff, but will be the topic of the built environment. And that is the important subject of land use and the land use choices that we make here, housing affordability or meeting your housing needs, historic preservation, right? Utilities and infrastructure. You'll talk about in the built environment essentially also your hamlets and development or potential redevelopment of those areas. So there are obviously 6 topics and not a whole heck of a lot of time. So if you go to the front of your agenda, you're going to notice that this evening there are 3 choices that you can make out of the 6. You'll visit whatever session you would like to go to for the first 30 minutes, and then we'll ring a bell, and you can move to a second topic of your choice. 30 minutes will pass, and you can move to the third topic of your choice. Now, one thing I want to caution is that I know some of the popular topics. We can't all rush to the popular topics. So I ask you to sort of break yourself up evenly. We're all adults in the room. I promise you will get to the session of your choice between either 1, 2, or 3. And just sort of find maybe a session that was not your first choice and head to it if you notice that it's getting crowded around the facilitator. The other thing I want to mention is that this is not your only opportunity when going to those 3 choices. Each facilitator at every section of this room has a piece of paper that asks the same questions the facilitators will ask you this evening. And you can pick up that piece of paper at a topic that you didn't get to go to tonight and fill it out and turn it into us. So essentially, you can, in one night, participate in all 6 sessions. You'll only, though, attend 3 with a facilitator, if that makes sense to everyone. Good? Okay. Final thing. There's a lot of you, and there's only a few of us as facilitators. And we want to make this go smoothly. And so we use things called ground rules. And they are posted up at every section of this room. And the ground rules say things like, be respectful, speak one at a time, listen, speak for yourself. So maybe there's a comment that you don't love that someone has said. We can refrain from commenting on that person's comment or responding back, and offer your own suggestions and thoughts. That's fine. We're not going to start any controversy tonight. Everyone we would like participating, we ask you to be courteous and respectful to us and to all of the recorders in the room. We are doing our best. But your words this evening are actually going to be captured in terms of someone scribing next to us. A recorder will be taking it down. And so we have to move, right? We're going to move quickly, but we're also going to make sure we capture everything that you say. So be patient with us. Those are my ground rules. You'll see the facilitators enforcing those ground rules. If you get really out of hand, I might bring you over to the food table, give you a donut or something. If you see one of the facilitators walk up to you kindly, it means you might be talking for too long. So you might get a little touch on the back. Anyway, we'll use our strategies, but I ask that you all sort of nod your head in agreement to abide by the ground rules this evening. Lovely, lovely. I don't see you. No, just kidding. All right, so we're all going to participate by ground rules. We have got refreshments. I mean, they're coffee, water, some fruit to keep you energized, munchkins, whatever can appeal for you to stay and do this with us. But this is a great opportunity. So on that note, what's about to happen is these rooms are going to be divided. The partitions are going to go, are going to come up here, we're going to put them up. Again, try to remember where these sessions are, because you're going to have to walk when the bell hits. You'll change to a new session. So I'm reminding you again, we've got economy, we've got sustainability, resiliency, built environment, mobility, community, culture, and education, and natural resources and open space. You can sort of just take your chair and bring it with you, maybe to the closest destination right now, if that works, and we'll get going. Thank you. Okay, here's where we're going. Next steps. Thank you, first of all, for your participation this evening. As a reminder, there was an exit survey that you could take about how you found out about this evening. And number two, again, visit those other sessions and grab information about them if you want to remark about open space and you didn't get to see it, or built environment. So participate in all the sessions. Next thing. We're going to take every single word you said tonight and type it up. We are going to post those things online. You will see them labeled as natural resource and open space, and you will have all of your lovely words of positive and negative, challenges and strategies all put up. That'll go for every single session that was put on here tonight. Then we're going to consolidate that information, so you'll see larger themes of issues and challenges that were brought to people's attention, right? Because some of you in groups said similar things, and so how often were those things said, and what did that look like? And so we will put that together in some type of executive summary that will also go up online. Everything's going to be online. Next. So yes, you go to the Town of Mount Pleasant's website, and there is a little logo that says Comprehensive Plan, Envision Mount Pleasant. Click on that. That's going to have where all of this stuff is. Number two, what I wanted to say is we might just replicate exactly what we did here tonight, if needed. We'll do this again, and either you come out and participate again, or you tell your neighbors to come participate because you enjoyed your experience so much with us this evening. Or we begin to move this conversation forward a little bit. So you will still see ways of participating in this process throughout the summer. And as we move into the fall, they might look different. They might be surveys. They might be poster boards around town. We will surprise you with ways of engaging you in this conversation. And then we're going to begin to take this the next step. So what you have created tonight are the goals of your comprehensive plan. And now we will begin to move and narrow in a little bit further of your objectives, your strategies, and what are your recommendations that should go into this comprehensive plan? And how do we prioritize those things for the town of Mount Pleasant? So that's where we're headed. Check us out online. I have your email addresses, so I will certainly tell people when everything is up online. And then I will also tell you when our next public workshop is, or your next public engagement type activity might look like or be. Other than that, thank you very much for this evening. We appreciate your time and energy. I don't know where Pat just went, but On behalf of Pat and myself, there you are, Pat, and myself, thank you and have a great evening.